lonely, lean body, wrapped in heavy overalls, climbed Derrick number 8 in the Valikia field. Its face was obscured with a bandana, a welder's cap, and a pair of large metal goggles. But when Norman Landovich reached the rig's apex and began to examine the mechanism, his deep voice called out, "Oh yeah, it's like Boss said." His voice was barely audible over the howling, ever-present New Bavarian wind and dust. The crown block's been tampered with. Busted all the shit. His yells went unanswered. Martin, you down there?" In the evening light and conditions, he couldn't see the base. Martin, come on, quit that shit. It's creepy up here." Only the distant green flares of neighboring rigs answered him. He made his way down with apparent trepidation. He saw the crew, not at the positions they had been, but rounded up, back to back, and sat together near the drawworks. He reached into his overalls and quietly drew his pistol. "That won't be necessary," a voice called up to him in common. "Yes, you're outnumbered." Another voice called from below the platform. The movement of several bodies accompanied the second voice. Electing to play this diplomatically, Norman reholstered his weapon and raised his hands. "Y'all are making a mistake. You know who owns this operation?" "Oh, we know," the first voice answered, and an elven man stepped forward to claim it. "We're planning on it." His hand rested on a long rifle. "Please, join your friends." He gestured to the rest of the crew. But before the next scene could play out, a large crack was heard, followed by the rumbling and screams of an automobile. A brutal, long-nosed, black wrought-iron behemoth that chewed the earth beneath it as it flew down the dirt road made itself known. Whirlwinds of dust formed and fell behind it. The auto screeched to the stairs leading to the platform and slowed to an idle. The door opened, and silence fell. Again, only the winds could be heard. The elven man reached into his jeans and pulled out a small piece of copper wire. "Hold positions." "Sit, please," he threw over his shoulder to Norman. He raised the long rifle to ready. For a few moments, only the angry wind and the creak of the now defunct rig could be heard. "All eyes on the auto. Watch for movement and fire at will." A hiatus fell. "Does anyone see him as he left the auto?" No response came. "Too early," a disembodied voice seemed to come from the very air around them. "You've attacked too early. You weren't ready." The elven man looked around the mechanisms of the derrick, sweeping his eyes over Norman, still frozen with his hands up. "Where are you, Strahd?" "I'm everywhere. Never really understood that, Westenfeld. It cost you the lives of your friends, and now it will cost you yours as well." The elf called out, using message. "Bodley, sound off." No response. "Quail, sound off." No response. "Victor, sound off." Only a low, gurgling noise responded. Panic swept over him. Show yourself, Strahd." His hand shook as he checked the corners of the platform. Trails of blood leading into the Valachian desert met him. Rage filled Westenfeld. I'll kill your people one by one until you show yourself." Silence. The hammer of his weapon clicked back, and he pointed it at Norman. "Strahd, don't make me do this. This is an innocent man, but I'll kill him if you don't show yourself." The elf's eyes filled with tears. The word sorry died on his lips as he pulled the trigger. But Norman did not fall. Perhaps he had missed, or the rifle misfired, but there had been a report. Long, claw-like hands removed the welding cap, goggles, and bandana. A gaunt, pale face emerged with piercing black eyes. Instinctively, Worstonfeld let loose the other 5 rounds into the center mass of the vampire, to no effect. He made to reach to his belt for more shells, but when he came back to reload, Strahd had a firm grasp on the muzzle. With one hand, he crumpled it like a flaccid garden hose. "Wouldn't have taken you for one to kill hostages. Though people do peculiar things when they are faced with death, don't they?" His false accent evaporated, and his fellow workers now rose from the deck and shambled to flank the vampire. In the dim light, they revealed their zombified features. "Your father would be so disappointed," he said, turning away, as the night became a chorus of screams, feasting of flesh, and finally the same silence. By the time Worstonfeld died at the hands of his minions, Strahd was comfortably seated in his trusted auto, Bucephalus. With a rev and a crack, he was back at Ravenloft Manor. Strahd tossed his dusty disguise to a nameless servant, and minutes later he was in a bath with a glass of blood-red wine. His head leaned back against the cool porcelain, and he let his mind wander as he swirled the drink, awakening its bouquet. This was his custom, and his servants knew that he was not to be disturbed after the final confrontation for at least a few hours. He arrived here some 60 years before and remade this land in his image. Its people were not conquered with steel but with gold. They had yielded to him just the same. And now his oil fueled the marvels of the outside world and was a prized commodity. The trains of New Baravia shipped it out and brought back the creature comforts that had eluded Strahd in this backwater for so long. His reverie was broken by a familiar voice. "The next party has arrived." Strahd sighed. "Too early. Mortals, always too early. The specter of death makes one so impatient." He toweled himself and slipped on an ornate silk robe. "Oh well, no rest for the wicked."